everybody. This is Radio Calling. I am Sam, your host, and today is Thursday. So this is the music portion of my podcast. Now, today uh, we have a very important birthday that we need to discuss. Bob Dylan turned 76 yesterday, so today's episode will be dedicated to talking about my love for Dylan, how I got into Bob Dylan, and um, just his influence on not only myself as a songwriter and musician, but other people as well. Bruce Springsteen, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, people of that nature. So, diving into it, if you don't know who Bob Dylan is, you really need to go back and listen to his early recordings. I think that's a good place to start. Um, Early recordings like "Blowing in the Wind," "The Times Are Changing," stuff about the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement going on in the '60s. Just spoke to a generation and became, the battle cry for so many people, and just people rally around those songs, and hearing those songs today, they still do ring true. A lot of those songs, if you um, were to play them today, and a lot of people still do play them today, and use them as a battle cry for what's going on in the world today. But um, I didn't start listening to Bob Dylan's folk music until I had discovered Bob Dylan as a person. It was actually, I was in middle school, and I can't remember the exact assignment, but I remember you had to listen to something out of your comfort zone for my music class. And my dad picked Bob Dylan. The Biograph box set was my first introduction to Bob Dylan. And I've mentioned this on my previous podcast, episode 12, I believe, the songwriters. I talk about Bob Dylan as a songwriter and lyricist. But that second disc of Biograph really got me into Bob Dylan. His acoustic outtakes on that album, as well as, staple songs that were just him and a guitar, and songs that really spoke to people, and they really spoke to me, especially those outtakes that never saw the light of day until they got released on those Biograph albums. Um, Songs that were done, during the time of Blood on the Tracks, alternate takes of songs that are on Blood on the Tracks. "You're a Big Girl Now," "Up to Me," which is kind of a variation of "Shelter from the Storm." I mean, songs of those natures, and then that really started me going down the rabbit hole of Bob Dylan. Um, I watched the documentary about him, the No Direction Home documentary, that uh, Martin Scorsese directed, and that really showed me, Bob as a folk artist. And then when he transitioned into his kind of rock rebellious period, that was something that really started to get me into that music. And another thing that really stuck out to me was his bootleg live in 1966, where he would play his first set would be acoustic, him guitar and harmonica, him just singing to the audience, and then his second set was with three-fourths of who would be later be called the band. Uh, that was Robbie Robertson, Richard Manuel, Garth Hudson, Rick Danko, and then Mickey Jones stood, uh, sat in for Levon Helm, who did not want to be another backing band. He wanted to be more of a public figure, more of a lead artist. So, I mean, you listen to that whole bootleg, the Live in '66 bootleg, and you can see there's a difference from the acoustic set to the electric set. The electric set is more raucous, more rebellious. You can tell there's a lot of hostility, and you can hear it on the album that there's a lot of cat calls from the audience, and a lot of banter between, Bob and the audience as well. But you can tell that Bob is definitely in a different period and stage in his life, and um, that's great example of rock history is that change of Bob going electric and him playing more raucous things, stuff of that nature. And then after that, that same year in '66, Bob crashes his motorcycle near Woodstock, New York, and it takes a while for him to recuperate, and the injuries were not documented on what he all kind of injured, but the word is that he injured a couple vertebrae and he was really hurt by it, and it took him a while to recover, and it really withdrew Bob from the public life, and he he did very few appearances, and he wouldn't back on tour for another 8 years after that. So that really changed, how he looked at things, and it really impacted his life. Um, the only time he ever went back and started writing and started playing music was um, what would later become the Basement Tapes, which were basically kind of acid bootlegs done in the band's basement, Big Pink, as they called it. And these were basically demos that were intended for other people. Um, the Birds actually uh, used a couple of these kind of demo tapes. Man for Man used it. Um, People of that nature just kind of used their demo tapes as kind of a leaping point to what they were trying to accomplish. And then you know the Basement Tapes didn't get released until 1975, and that's one of my favorite albums. Is you know I love when Bob Dylan would work with the band, and then he would later go back on tour with the band as well. Um, but those all those songs on there, Tears of Rage, Katie's Been Gone, um, Going to Acapulco, Quinn the Eskimo, all those songs. Oh my God, they're so great, and you can just tell that it's just those guys playing music for themselves. They're not playing it for anybody else, um, and they're just playing it for themselves. And they're all in one spot. They're all in a basement, and that's what inspired my band to record in our basement, or my basement was, you know it, we didn't feel the need to have go to a studio and pay $100 per hour for 6 songs or whatever. We thought we could do it all of our own, because that's what the band did. They just got a tape reel, they set it up, they played. They had a piano in their basement, a little makeshift drum set, and then guitars, bass, organ was down there a little bit, but that's basically the whole setup of the basement, and that's what led to the Basement Tapes. And if you haven't listened to the Basement Tapes, I will link one of the songs in the description below as well. It's a great piece of rock history. Again, all of Bob's albums are a great piece of rock history, and you can see his transition, from his folk stage to his going electric stage, and then his after recovery stage from his injury with his motorcycle, and then he goes to his countryside as well right after that. And he goes back into the studio in 1967, 19 months after his kind of recovery, and he plays with Johnny Cash, who is a great influence of Bob Dylan's, and they record um, "Girl from the North Country," and then Bob's singing differently for Lay Lady Lay," songs of that nature, and you can tell that there's a different voice to Bob, not only in his recordings, but in his tone of voice and how he's looking at the world now. And um, "Blood on the Tracks" is another one of those songs where, or not another one of those albums where it's a game changer, and all those songs are fabulous. I can listen to that whole album front to back and not get sick of any one of those songs. But what I alluded to this in my other podcast or my other episode, as well, the songwriters episode. Um, the studio sessions of Blood on the Tracks um, that weren't released, I personally believe are better than what is on the album. Granted, Idiot Wind, Shelter from the Storm, Simple Twist of Fate, Tangled Up in Blue, You're a Big Girl Now, all those songs are great. I love the album, but I personally like these studio sessions better, that were done in New York. And there's something about these songs. I will try to post um, in the link. I will try to post a link in the description below. But these songs are very hard to find because it's hard to get around Bob Dylan's copyright. He's um, very against having songs on YouTube unless he approves them. He's got his own Bob Dylan Vivo page. So some of these songs are on there, but some are not, and most of his Vivo page is uh, kind of based on promoting new albums that are coming out of Bob's. So you'll get like 2 or 3 songs, but you can't get like a full album on his Vivo page. But I will again I will post a link in the description below so you can check out some of these songs. But going back to those sessions of Blood on the Tracks, there's there's a very different tone in those songs than what is on the album. They're more dark, they're more ominous. Where Idiot Wind on the album is more raucous. It's more, you can tell there's anger behind it, and you can tell there's Bob's trying to say something. You better listen. And I think I alluded to this in my songwriters episode as well. But there's a lot of great songs on that album. Again, I will try to post what I can in the link in the description, or a link in the description. But I can only do so much. But you can also, you can go and look and buy these things as well. I mean, Blood on the Tracks you can buy. You can find bootlegs of the sessions of Blood on the Tracks. Um, the Bob Dylan Live in '66 you can get anywhere, as well as the basement tapes. And a lot of these things are getting reissues, which is great. Basement tapes is kind of expanding, and not too long ago, the whole catalog of the basement tapes was released to the public, and I think it's 2 discs worth, and then it's 4 on vinyl, I believe, as well. So you can pick that up. It's great, and there's some of those songs that didn't make the original or basement tapes are on this basement tapes, the full catalog, so you can listen to songs that were on there. And "Sign on the Cross" is one of those songs where Bob's kind of turning to religion, and you can hear that in his song about "Sign on the Cross." There's a lot of songs that are kind of like dry run throughs, or first takes. So "I Shall Be Released" was a first take. "Tears of Rage" is on there, I believe, too. There's a couple takes of "I Shall Be Released" that are kind of different, and they start right away with lyrics, or different lyrics too, as well. So you should probably check that out as well. But going back to the influence of Bob Dylan, I don't even know where to begin. So many people have covered his work. To the Byrds are probably one of the main ones, with Mr. Tambourine Man, because it was just such a great hit for them. Jimi Hendrix is another one that was very influenced by Bob Dylan, and just on his songwriting, and he was just obsessed with everything Bob Dylan. He had it was rumored that he had a Bob Dylan songbook wherever you went, and he would always refer to that when he was making lyrics up, or doing different things. He would always try to make a little reference to Bob Dylan. And then, of course, there's the "All Along the Watchtower," which, fun fact about that song, when Bob Dylan heard Jimi Hendrix's version of "All Along the Watchtower," he loved it. He just was so amazed on what Jimmy had done to his song and made it even better. And then when Jimmy passed away, Bob started playing it like Jimi Hendrix would, not, doing all of his crazy soloing and everything as Jimmy was accustomed to, but he plays it in a raucous kind of feel like Jimmy played, and that's kind of the always nod Bob Dylan always does for Jimmy, just showing that appreciation. But another one um, is Sonny and Cher. Their song "I Got You, Babe" was kind of a play on it ain't me, babe. Um, Johnny Cash was big into Bob Dylan as well, very obsessed like Jimmy was with Bob Dylan. Um, and then and Bruce Springsteen, when he was first establishing himself as a artist, those first two albums of Bruce Springsteen, "Greetings from Harrisburg Park" and "The Wild and Innocent" and "East Street Shuffle, have a lot of lyrics like Bob would. "Blinded by the Light" is one that sticks out in my head that has a lot of lyrics and um, a lot of words and phrases and imagery that are very similar to Bob Dylan, and you can just hear Bob Dylan's influence just on so many people. The Beatles were very influenced by Bob Dylan as well. The rumor is Bob Dylan is the person that kind of turned the Beatles on to marijuana, and the story is that Ringo was the first to try it, and then the rest of the Beatles followed suit. And there's a very interesting cartoon or illustration that someone had done about, I believe, one of the Beatles telling that story, and I will also put that link in the description below so you can check that out. But again, Bob Dylan has done so much, influenced so many people, and I wanted to look up all the awards that he's won, and he's won 43 awards. He's been nominated 27 times throughout his career. Um, his first kind of big award win was for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal, and that was the Traveling Wilburys in 1990, with Bob Dylan, of course, Jeff Lynne, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty, and George Harrison. So there again, Bob Dylan's been nominated for a lot of things. Um, "Time Out of My Mind" won Best Contemporary Folk Album in 1998. Um, he also won Best Rock Vocal Performance, the male category, of course, for "Cold Iron Bound." Irons Bound. Um, "Love and Theft" won Album of the Year. No, it did not win. It was nominated for Album of the Year in 2002. It won Best Contemporary Folk Album that year as well. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of Bob touches so many different genres that if you like country, there's a section for you. If you like his kind of rebellious rock, there's a section for you as well. And if you like his early folk music, and if you're really getting into his folk music, um, you can check out his early stuff as well. So there's a little bit of everything for Bob Dylan, and he's been awarded the Medal of Freedom. He's going to be um, awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, something that he's turned down several years, but he's finally going to get. He's been honored at the Kennedy Center Honors as well, and he's also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I believe he is um, one of the not the first initial class, but I think he got inducted um, with the Beatles and people of that nature, just because it's Bob Dylan. Um, but don't quote me on that. You can do a little bit of research of that, and read up about Bob Dylan as well. But again, Bob Dylan, he is 76 as of yesterday. I believe he's still touring. I haven't really heard anything other than that. But, 76 and still going and still writing music and still doing what he loves. And it's great for him to still produce music and still tour because, me, like myself, he's touching a new generation, and a new generation wants to see him in concert and wants to continue to, you know, s- see him succeed and see what he can do, because he never really plays a song the same way twice. And Bruce Springsteen is the same way. There's little things that he plays differently. He'll sing it in a different key. He'll sing it in a different, you know, tune. Um, he'll kind of change the whole aspect of the song. And um, when he was touring with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, um, it's documented in Tom Petty's documentary that they always had to be on their toes when Bob Dylan was playing with them. Bob would, he's very like Bruce Springsteen, as in the way that he would play in a different key, different tuning, totally revamp a song. So they always had to be on their toes, and I think that's a great way of having a band play, and always be ready for whatever comes. And it's just something that I like to do, something that I've kind of instilled, and it's another one of those influences of Bob Dylan. And he, words can't describe what Bob Dylan has done to the music business, and just how things are shaped and words are phrased and stuff like that. So, happy birthday to him. Well, that'll do it for another episode of Radio Calling. Again, I am Sam, your host. Join me on Tuesday, where I will discuss the sports aspect of my podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to this video if you would like to see more podcasts by Radio Calling. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at London Calling 22, all one word. Again, this is Radio Calling, and we'll see you on Tuesday.